Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we have a news and rumor video here to discuss. In today's video, we're looking at some signings, some injury updates, some recalls and reassignments, a couple of small pieces of news, and we have some trade rumors involving the Wings, the Canucks, and the Maple Leafs. We'll touch on all of these coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. Now before we begin this video, do not forget to like this video and subscribe down below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do this without all of you guys, so if you haven't already, don't forget the subscribe button down below. Don't forget to comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers and try and hit 650 in the next couple of weeks. I think we're about 6 or 7 subscribers away, so if you can, leave a subscribe. It really does help with the channel. And on top of that, don't forget to check out more videos coming out in the very near future. Also, if you haven't already, don't forget to check out my Buy Me a Coffee page. I set up a little while ago. It's just a place that you guys can go to support my channel. So if you guys can and it's within your means, go over to the page and make a donation. I'll leave a link to it in the description below. It really does help with the channel. And on top of that, don't forget to stay tuned for my live streams over in mid-April. I'm going to be doing about 2 to 3 weekly live streams for the playoffs, basically doing play-by-plays for the playoff games. Not going to do all of them, but just a couple of them, because this will be the first time I'm doing anything like this. So if you can and it's within your means, in April I'll try and announce when I'm doing them. I'll have some live streams coming out, so don't forget to stay tuned for that. But in today's video, we do have another news and rumor video here to discuss. Now, I don't want to take too much time out of this. There were about, I think, 10 or 11 signings over the past couple of days, mostly ELCs, so I'm going to try and get through them quickly here. First, we'll go to the one that was a non-ELC signing. That was in the National Predators organization. Young forward Fedor Svechkov, who's 22 years old. He's a center/left winger in the final year of his ELC. When I'm getting a 2-year contract extension with the AV of $1.25 million. We just recently saw the Preds sign, I think it was Zary LaRue, to a 2-year extension. So they're just signing some of the younger guys to sort of 2-year bridge deals coming out of their ELCs. Not a bad pickup here. Svechkov had 3 goals and 14 points in 59 games this year with the Preds. So not a bad pickup here. And I think long term he has the potential to be a really solid third liner, whether that's the center or the wing spot. So not a bad pickup here from Nashville, getting Svechkov under contract for the next couple of seasons. Then just going over here to a couple of quick ELCs. Most of these guys were playing over in college, but we'll touch on all of them here. So first, the Anaheim Ducks have signed Hermaine Traff, who's a winger, 22-year-old, with a 3rd-round pick of the New Jersey Devils in the 2024 draft. Was actually a prospect they got in the package that sent Brian Dumoulin to the New Jersey Devils last year. So it was a really solid pickup here from the Anaheim Ducks, and they officially signed him. He gets a 3-year ELC AV of $990,000, begins at the start of next season. He had 23 goals and 41 points in 51 Hockey Allsvenskan games, which isn't overly bad. He's a winger. I think eventually Traff could be like a really solid third-line winger for the Ducks. So not a bad pickup here from Anaheim, getting Traff signed. The Dallas Stars have signed Aram Mintian, who's a right-shot defenseman, 21 years old, was a Stars pick in the 2023 draft in the 4th round. He gets a 3-year ELC AV of $1.075 million, so not a bad pickup here from Dallas. Once again, starts at the beginning of next season. He was in the NCAA, putting up 2 goals and 11 points in 36 games, which as a defenseman isn't terrible. Take him a couple of years, but I think eventually he could be like a really solid third pair defenders, so not a bad pickup here from Dallas. The New York Islanders have signed undrafted goalie prospect Joshua Cote, who's a 23-year-old prospect. He signs a 2-year ELC with the AV of $965,000. Once again, starts at the beginning of next year. Was playing over in college, where he had a 1.99 GAA and 938 save percentage in 35 games. Not sure if this will be able to transfer to pro-level success, but those are some pretty gosh dang good numbers. So maybe a little bit of an under-the-radar signing here by the New York Islanders. The New York Rangers have actually signed Drew Fortescue, a 20-year-old left-shot defenseman. He was a Rangers pick, 2023 3rd rounder. He gets a 3-year ELC AV of $923,000. This is a really good pickup here for the Rangers. Over in college, he had put up 4 goals and 14 points in 36 games as a defenseman, which is not half bad. I think Fortescue could be a really solid third, maybe second pair shutdown sort of defenseman. So it's probably going to take him a year or 2 to get to the NHL level, but not a bad pickup here from the Rangers. The Philadelphia Flyers have signed Alex Ciernik, who's a winger, 21 years old, a Flyers prospect, 4th rounder in the 2023 draft. He gets a 3-year ELC with AV of $1.08 million. Once again, starts at the beginning of next year, so not a bad pickup here for the Flyers. He's been playing over in Liga, putting up a goal and 3 points in 19 games. So once again, not a bad pickup here. I think eventually he could be a bomb 6 forward, so very interesting pickup here from Philly. Just one quick note, I think I got mistaken. New York Rangers with Drew Fortescue, that contract starts this year, so it's for the rest of this season and the next 2 seasons. So it's a deal that does get backdated to the rest of this year. So just interesting note there for Drew Fortescue. The Penguins have signed 2 players to ELCs. That's goalie Gabriel Diego and forward Bill Zonin. Zonin's a left winger, 19 years old, was a first-round pick of the Pittsburgh Penguins back in the 2025 draft. I think it was like 23 or 24 overall. So a really solid pickup here for Pittsburgh. He gets a 3-year ELC AV of $1.08 million. In the QMJHL, had 14 goals and 46 points in 35 games this year, which is nothing to scoff at. Really solid numbers there from Zonin, who I think eventually could be a really solid top 6 forward there. And then Daigle's a goalie prospect, 19 years old. He was a 2025 third-round pick of the Pittsburgh Penguins. He gets a 3-year ELC AV of $995,000. Also playing in the QMJHL, he had a 3.58 JA and 908 save percentage in 39 games. Looks like he definitely has some growing still to do, but Daigle's a really solid goalie prospect with some pretty good pickups here for Pittsburgh. The Mammoths have signed 4th overall pick from the 2025 draft, Caleb Denwyer, the 18-year-old center. That's his ELC, a 3-year ELC with an AV of $1.08 million. Also playing in the QMJHL, had 22 goals and 78 points in 45 games this year. I could see him potentially make the initial lineup as early as next year. So not bad pickup here from Utah. And then the Vegas Golden Knights have signed Pavel Moisevich, who's a goaltending prospect, 21 years old. He was a Knights draft pick, 3rd round in the 2024 draft. Not too surprising there. He gets a 3-year ELC AV of $980,000. He's been playing over in the lower Russian league in the VHL, putting up a 2.41 JA, 917 save percentage in 10 games. It looks like he might be the goalie of the future for the Vegas Golden Knights. So very interesting note there, but some very interesting ELCs were handed out over the past couple of days. Next, going over to a couple of injury updates. So we do have a couple of very interesting injury updates from our past couple of days. So first, Connor Zary left Saturday's game after being ran into the boards by AJ Greer, which we'll talk about in a minute. He is currently out day-to-day with upper body injury and also missed Sunday's game due to it, so not great news there, as Zary's a pretty decent top 9 forward. Matt Grzelcyk left Saturday's game with an undisclosed injury and didn't return for the Chicago Blackhawks and won't travel with the Hawks on their current road trip, so not great news there for Chicago as they lose a really solid third-pair defender. Gabriel Landeskog, who missed 2 weeks with a lower body injury, returned to game action on Sunday, so it was a big boost for the Avalanche to get their solid top 6 forward back into the lineup. And Logan O'Connor, who had hip surgery in June, wound up making his season debut just yesterday on Tuesday. So that was a big boost for the Avalanche to get a really solid bomb 6 penalty killer and O'Connor back in the lineup. However, Nick Waugh missed Tuesday's game with upper body injury and is out day-to-day. Doesn't seem to say anything too serious, but not great news there for Waugh. Dylan Larkin, who missed 7 games with a leg injury, returned to game action on Tuesday, so it was a big boost for the Wings yesterday to get their captain back, although it didn't result in a win. Nico Mikkola and Uvis Balinskis' season are over. Mikkola has a knee injury, Balinskis has an undisclosed fracture, and both are going to be out at least 4 to 6 weeks. So that puts them out until the end of the regular season, and because the Florida Panthers are not making the playoffs, that puts them out for the rest of the regular season, so not great news there. Stefan Noesen, who had knee surgery in January, will also miss the rest of the year for the New Jersey Devils, so that's not great news there. Hopefully Noesen will be able to go for the beginning of next year, while Brett Pesce, who's missed almost 3 weeks now with a lower body injury, may be able to return before the season ends, but the Devils aren't going to rush him as they are no longer in a race for a playoff spot. So Pesce could come back, but there's no guarantees about that happening. Ryan Pulock and Anthony Duclair both missed Sunday's games with lower body injuries sustained on Saturday, and both are out day to day, so not great news there. Hopefully they're going to be back in the very near future, but those are bad blows for the New York Islanders. And they got another one last night as Tony DeAngelo left Tuesday's game with a lower body injury and did not return, so not great news there for the Islanders blue line. The Sens blue line has also been decimated with injuries. Dennis Gilbert left Saturday's game with undisclosed injury and will miss some time. The Sens blue line is already missing Jensen and Sanderson, so they called up Lassie Thompson, and then on Monday Lassie Thompson and Thomas Chabot both left the game with undisclosed injuries and have been confirmed to be out for a while, so not great news there. The Senators had to win on Monday with only 4 defensemen and then had a very battered up blue line, and surprisingly still came away with a win over the Detroit Red Wings last night, so good stuff there. But Chabot, Thompson, Gilbert all out right now with injuries. Ethan Frank left Sunday's game with a lower body injury and didn't return for Washington, so that's not great news there, and hopefully his injury is not too severe. Ryan Shea left Saturday's game and missed Sunday's game with undisclosed injury and is out day to day, and Evgeny Malkin missed Tuesday's game with upper body injury and is out day to day, so not great news there as the Penguins second line center and surprisingly really solid second, third pair defensemen are both out right now with injuries and are out day to day, so not great news there. Then Ryan Reeves is out week to week with undisclosed injury for the San Jose Sharks. Hopefully he's not going to be out for the rest of the season, but he's going to be be at least out for probably the next week or two. So some very interesting injury updates from our past couple of days. We also saw some recalls and reassignments from our past couple of days as well. When it comes to some recalls, Anton Frondell in Chicago was recalled. The Hawks wanted to give him a look at the NHL before the season ends. They actually got an assist last night, so really good stuff there. The Oilers recalled James Hamblin on an emergency basis due to some of the injured players that they have right now, so not too surprising there. Noah Gregor was recalled by Florida because of the injuries they have on their team. Isaiah George was recalled by NYI because of the injuries to Pulak and D'Angelo. Sikora was recalled by NYR. They made an AHL swap and they wanted some more forward help, so they called up Sikora. Donovan and Yakinchuk were recalled by Ottawa because of the injuries to Chabot and Thompson. Yakinchuk actually scored his first career NHL goal and his first career NHL point in yesterday's game against Detroit, so really good stuff there. Ville Koivunen was recalled back after the Evgeny Malkin injury and played last night, so really good stuff there. And Delton Silva was recalled by the Toronto Maple Leafs because they were having some potential injuries with one of their goaltenders, so very interesting note there. But some very interesting recalls from our past couple of days. Well, when it comes to some reassignments, Charles Alexis Legal was recalled recently, but also just after the Carolina Hurricanes game was sent back down, so very interesting note there. But Legal is back at the AHL level. The Detroit Red Wings have sent down rookies Axel Sandin-Pellikka and Michael Brandt-Nygaard back to the AHL, so with Larkin being healthy now, they don't need those two at the NHL level, so they were both sent down. Matt Murray was sent down by Nashville because Saros is now healthy. Connor Mackey was sent down by the Rangers because they called up Adam Sikora, and Laurent Brossoit was sent down by the San Jose Sharks because Askarov is now healthy. So very interesting note there, but some very interesting recalls and reassignments from over the past couple of days. Next here, going over to a couple of small pieces of news. When it comes to some small pieces of news, not too much stuff here. Samuel Fagemo, a former second-round pick who's played with Los Angeles, Nashville, and Winnipeg over the past number of seasons, is apparently going to head over to the SHL when the season comes to an end. So he's basically been a perennial AHL player, but now he's going to take his talent overseas and head over to the SHL after the season ends, so not too surprising there. Speaking of overseas, recently there's been an announcement that the Seattle Kraken and Carolina Hurricanes are going to play in a Global Series game in November 2026. So at the beginning of next season, about a month into the season, Seattle and Carolina are going to go over to play in Finland as part of the Global Series games. So very interesting note there. So very interesting to mark your calendar for, I think, November 12th, as Seattle and Carolina are going to go over to Finland. When it comes to the Boston Bruins, they have signed James Hagens, their top pick and the 7th overall pick from last year's draft, to an amateur tryout with their AHL clubs. So they've not signed him to an ELC yet, but they're going to sign him to an AHL tryout and see how he does at the AHL level. And if they like what they see, they might try and sign him to his ELC. So we'll have to wait and see how that goes. And then we also have a couple of more bigger pieces of news, as the NHL and CHL are nearing an agreement that will be able to send 19-year-old players who usually just play in junior and aren't eligible to go to the AHL. That would allow that to happen. There's apparently some discussions going on about how that would all work, but it seems like first-round picks that are 19 years old will be exempt and can go to the AHL if the team decides to, and they could be as much as they want. So it seems like it has to be a first-round pick, but there could be some 19-year-olds who can now be sent down to the AHL if the NHL and CHL do come to an agreement. So very interesting note there. And lastly, going over to the Calgary Flames and Florida Panthers, we talked about at the beginning of the injury updates, Connor Zary is injured. He got cross-checked into the boards very hardly by AJ Greer, who was not even trying to play a puck. It was an egregious penalty. I think he got a game misconduct for it, and there had been a suspension due to it. Greer's got a 3-game suspension for, I think it's interference or boarding. I'm not exactly sure. So very interesting note there. Was a very bad hit. I'm surprised they didn't get a little bit more. I thought it would have been maybe like 4 or 5 games because it was a pretty dang bad hit. If you guys want to go check it out, I'm sure there's probably a couple of video clips of it, but it was not good. So he's going to be suspended for 3 games. I think he's already served the first game of his suspension, and now he's got 2 more games to go. So very interesting note there. But Greer is suspended 3 games for the Florida Panthers after delivering a really bad hit that injured Connor Zary. So very interesting note there. But those are all the pieces of news. Vagemo's heading overseas. Seattle, Carolina will play in a Global Series game. Hagens is headed to the AHL for the Boston Bruins. The NHL and CHL are reaching an agreement to send 19-year-old first-round picks to the AHL if they want to. And AJ Greer has been suspended 3 games. So very interesting note there. And lastly here, going over to a couple of trade rumors. So we have 3 trade rumors here to talk about. 1 involving things that did not happen for a specific team at the trade deadline, and 2 involving things we could see in the offseason. So the first thing I want to talk about here is from Frank Seravalli. He was talking about the Vancouver Canucks, and he says that the goalie market in the NHL for this upcoming offseason is very, very weak. He says besides guys like Frederik Andersen and Stuart Skinner, there's really no free agent goaltenders who could really be a solid tandem goaltending partner for a lot of teams. And on the trade market, besides a guy like maybe Anthony Stolarz or Joseph Woll, there's not a whole bunch of really elite level goalie trade candidates this year either. So he mentions that if he is healthy enough and the Canucks still want to go on this full resell, which is seeming like something that the Canucks really want to do, then he would not be one bit surprised if the Canucks would listen in the offseason on Thatcher Demko. Now that's not too surprising in my opinion. The Canucks really do want to try and go through a full retool, which is why I've mentioned guys like DeBrusk, Pettersson, Besser could be dealt in the offseason. They want to tear it down as much as they can. Now if they want to go for another top end draft pick at next year's draft, they don't want to have a whole bunch of elite level players at their NHL level. And Demko's the guy who's going to win you 10 to 20 games if he's healthy and playing on an everyday basis. Now another reason why Seravalli is mentioning that they could trade him is that at this current point in time, Demko's extension is about to kick in at the beginning of next year. That's $8.5 million. They're still paying Lankinen $5.4 million. They really want to pay $14 million to a goaltending tandem. Probably not. I know the cap's going up, but still. It might make more sense for the Canucks if they could get a really big haul. Something like the Flames got for Markstrom or the Bruins got for Allmark. I wouldn't be too shocked if we saw a Demko trade. Now, he has a whole bunch of injuries, and that cap hit on the goaltending side is quite expensive. But when he's healthy, he is like a top 10, top 15 goaltender in the entire NHL. So I wouldn't say it's a guarantee, because I do think Demko being just signing an extension and things like that might be a little bit harder to move, especially given the fact he's an $8.5 million goaltender who has injury problems. But given the fact there's not a lot of goalie options on the trade market right now, if you're a team like Edmonton or Carolina or maybe even Columbus or Philadelphia who are really desperate for a goaltending upgrade, I could see him try and make some sort of a deal with Vancouver involving Thatcher Demko. So I'll have to wait and see on that, but keep your eye on the Canucks in the offseason as they could look to try and move Thatcher Demko, so very interesting note there. Next, going over to the Detroit Red Wings. Anthony DeMarco was talking about the Red Wings, and he mentions that the reason why Red Wings didn't do more at the trade deadline is because Steve Yzerman was reluctant to trade some of his top end prospects. He says that while he was willing to make some sort of a big move, he was not willing to move Nate Danielson and the two goalie prospects in Kosa and Augustine in particular. So that's why we did not see much more from Detroit besides the Justin Falk deal. And I do like the Justin Falk deal, but it just seemed that the Red Wings could have done more at the trade deadline, which is why I think that if they miss the playoffs, Yzerman might be fired. So once again, I'm not going to say it's a problem that they didn't move any of those top prospects, because I think Danielson has the potential to be a really solid like 2-3C, and I do think Kosa and Augustine eventually could be the Detroit Red Wings goaltending tandem. So I'm not going to say it's a bad thing that they didn't move any of those guys, but I think at least one maybe they could have tried to move. Like the Red Wings haven't made the playoffs in 9 years. That fan base really wants to make it. So even though it will have cost them maybe like one top end prospect, I will have potentially parted ways with even one of them. I know maybe not all three, but I definitely would have thought that the Red Wings would have been a little bit more open, given where they were in the standings of the trade deadline, to trade one or two of those top end prospects. So very interesting note there. I'm not going to say it's a bad move because they do keep some of their future going forward, but still, like, it's a little bit bad for the Detroit Red Wings that they didn't do more at the trade deadline. That's apparently the reason, according to Anthony DeMarco, which makes some sense. So very interesting note there. And lastly, going over to David Pagnotta, he mentions that when it comes to Morgan Rielly, who is a potential trade candidate for the Toronto Maple Leafs in the offseason, he says that two potential landing spots he could see, and I completely agree with this, is the San Jose Sharks and the Anaheim Ducks. This makes a ton of sense. The San Jose Sharks are lacking defensive help right now. They have, I think, 4 players who are pending UFAs and could potentially walk in free agency. That's Ferraro, that's Klingberg, that's Desharnais, and I think there's one other guy too on their blue line that is a pending UFA. So they're going to have a lot of players potentially leave in free agency, which would decimate that blue line. They have a couple of younger guys, but they're going to need to insulate their younger guys with at least 2 or 3 veteran defensemen in the offseason. And Rielly makes a ton of sense. A guy who can play top pair minutes, who's a left shot defenseman, who could help the team grow as a very good veteran. I think it would really help that Sharks blue line. When it comes to Anaheim, they have a whole bunch of pending UFAs themselves. John Carlson, Jacob Trouba, and Radko Gudas are all scheduled to hit free agency in the offseason, and because of that, the Ducks could try and make a ton of moves on their blue line in the offseason. I think Morgan Rielly wouldn't be too surprising. They do have a lot of left shot rookie defensemen, such as a guy like Mintnyakov or Zellweger, so I'm not sure if acquiring a left shot defenseman like Morgan Rielly would be the best fit for the Anaheim Ducks, but adding a veteran defenseman, especially if they were to lose guys like Carlson and Trouba, wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for the Anaheim Ducks. So very interesting note there. I keep your eye on the Anaheim Ducks and the San Jose Sharks for sure, making goalie moves in the offseason because they have a whole bunch of pending UFAs that I'm not sure if all of them will be back. And I personally, for one, would not be too surprised if we did see Morgan Rielly get moved to one of those two teams. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But that's what I'm going to talk for today. I'll let you guys thoughts. Does Morgan Rielly get moved, and could he go to San Jose or Anaheim? Are you surprised that the Red Wings were reluctant to move some of their top prospects, and do you think it will cost them a playoff spot? And do you think that the Vancouver Canucks could wind up moving Thatcher Demko in the offseason? Definitely your thoughts on all of that, plus all the news updates, signings, trade rumors, and all the other stuff we talked about. That's what I want to talk for today. Remember to like this video, and if you're like, remember to subscribe down below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do it without all of you guys, so if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers, trying to hit 650 soon, so if you can, leave a subscribe. It really does help with the channel. Don't forget to stay tuned for my live streams in April and May when we're doing live streams covering some of the NHL playoff games, so don't forget to stay tuned for that. I also do a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that, so check that out. I'll link to that down in the description below. And can't wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.